Hi, everyone. Welcome to AllCloud's Best of reInvent webinar. Thank you for joining us. AllCloud is an AWS Premier Consulting Partner and Managed Service Partner. We are here as your trusted advisors. If you have any questions, we will be happy to answer them after the presentation. Just you can log them in the Q&A section down below. Our presenter today is Brodny, AllCloud's Cloud Architect Manager. He's going to fill us in on all the new announcements from AWS's reInvent. So let's get started.
Hey everyone. So without further ado, I would like to take you on this journey and talk with you about some of the features that were announced on the latest AWS reInvent. So first of all, if you're not familiar with AWS reInvent, it's a conference hosted by AWS, of course, which happens every year. And the idea is to let all the partners know about new features, everything new coming from Amazon, all the paths that seems to be correct for the future. And other than that, it's the biggest event hosting the biggest amount of technical session and webinars and expos. So let's start. Wait, there's a question? No, okay. So what's new this year? So the first thing I would like to discuss with you about is major areas in terms of databases. So serverless Aurora. If you know Aurora, that's a rational database compatible with MySQL and Postgres, which have 5 times the performance of any of those. And Aurora is quite strong as it is. It allows replication of each chunk of database 6 ways across 3 availability zone, which have made this product to be quite strong as it is up until now. The major thing that Amazon released this year first was the Aurora Serverless, which means that let's say that if up until now you wanted to have a really strong database, but not necessarily had the use case for that. So for example, you had infrequently used application, or you had new application where you didn't really know the database size that you require, or you had variable workloads, unpredictable workloads, or dev environments. You had to reprovision the database. You had to really know what you're gonna need to work with, and of course you had to pay for all of that. So with Aurora Serverless, Amazon is saying you don't need to do that anymore. You can have Aurora, and you don't need to provision anything but your database. And the database itself, I mean, behind the stage, Amazon will provision the resources needed for your database. And not only that, it will be able to scale it up or scale it down according to your actual workload, which means that, for example, if you have a dev and test environment and you're only working on that on specific hours, the serverless architecture will be able to automatically shut down the database where you're not using it. Same goes with unpredictable workloads. You don't need to reprovision the workloads anymore. The database will be able to just scale up when the load is high and thus scale back down when it's not. So it's very similar to what Amazon does with the auto-scaling of EC2s, but it does that for you automatically. So that's a really cool feature, which I guess a lot of customers start using. Another thing that Amazon released for Aurora is the multi-master, which I think is a really cool feature, because that means that not only you can, add more read replicas if you need more performance out of your database, but now you can actually add more masters, meaning you have both capacity for write, not only read. So when you scale out or up, you don't need to only provision more resources in terms of compute, but you can actually add more master unit. And the other beneficial, really big thing about that is that it's also spread across multiple availability zones and multiple region, which means that, you know, if your customers are sitting behind multiple zones and you would like them to have write control in those zones, so now that's available, and Amazon will make sure that all of the masters are synced. And you don't have to take care in the application there, you don't have to take care of anything extra than that. You just use the same working standards as you've been used to up until now. So that's something which is really cool. It also means that you no longer have a single point of failure in terms of a master, because you're working with several masters. And also because of the elimination of a single point of failure, this is going to be tolerance for failures, and it's going to be transparent for you. You don't need to do anything more in order for that to work. So that's really cool. And similar to that, this was also announced for the DynamoDB, which is the NoSQL service offering from AWS. DynamoDB is now offered with a flavor of global tables, which means you have the ability to replicate the data across 2 or more regions, as well as, again, write and read in any of those regions. So you're not limited. It's not read replica. It's actually also supports the write themselves. Also, the same goes with the tolerance. So the tolerance is much higher as you have more masters. Again, it allows applications to perform low latency read and writes to local Amazon DynamoDB tables as they are actually sitting on the same region as your application. So this is an amazing feature because it actually gives you an answer to 2 big problems we used to have. So it's both in terms of the capacity of the database. So think about that. You're not limited to specific cases of read or specific cases of high latency. You get it all. You get write across multiple regions. You get low latency wherever your application is. You avoid the problem of single point of failure. And another big thing that was announced is also the on-demand backup for DynamoDB, which means not only you can take instance backup of your database, but you can do that for short-term retention and data protection in a click. And the idea of that is to set up the infrastructure to enable you to have point-in-time restore for the data. So if you create backup of your data and something got corrupt or something fails, you will be able to specify a minute in time for the last up until 35 days you want to just back up your data to. So this offering for the databases is amazing. So you have multiple masters, you have IO, you have on-demand backup and restore. This is a feature that's going to take your application a long way. And again, for you as an app developer, there's no change. The DynamoDB API is exactly the same. There's nothing extra to provision. There's nothing extra to work on. It just works seamlessly out of the box. So that's another thing which is really cool about that. Okay, so moving forward. Another feature that was introduced is on the storage area, and that's the S3 Select. S3 Select allows you to query specific information with stored elements. So the capability here is to give you the option to pull not all the objects in your bucket, but actually query for specific types of information. Currently, the data type that are supported are either JSON or CSV files. So it needs to be something that is queryable. But this makes it very strong. So it reduces the time it takes to pull data because you no longer need to pull the entire data, but you can just select specific objects. And this goes both to the S3 and the Glacier. And for Glacier, it's even bigger news because you know that restoring data from Glacier takes a lot of time. But now you don't need to restore your entire data. You can, again, just query sorry, elements from within that. So one use case that you can think of is, for example, a retailer that stores data about his sales, his ongoing sales, into a CSV file, and he's doing that for a long period of time. And then one of the BI engineers in that reseller needs to do some query to see some statistics about what happened in the last week or so. So instead of just querying all the stored information within S3, you can just select and select specific types of information and dates, and just get that instead of just dealing with high amounts of data. So again, the select can be performed on objects that are either CSV or JSON format, where in 2018 more formats will be added, such as logs and more columnar objects and stuff like that. Yeah, okay. So what I didn't say is that the select is currently, the feature is selecting by SQL statements. So that's very easy to write. It doesn't mean you need to write a lot of code for that. It's quite simple, and it's something you can try with your already stored S3 data at the moment. So that's available. Okay. I'm going forward. So another big area that was addressed was the machine learning and AI. There were three major features that Amazon presented, AWS presented, I'm sorry. First one was video recognition, Kinesis video stream, and comprehend. I'm going to talk a little bit about each of those. So video recognition. The idea of video recognition is actually to answer a need of ongoing demand to analyze video streams in real time. So the idea is that Amazon give you AWS give you the platform to analyze video, identify people, identify objects, track them, track the scenery, track elements that are in the video where the video is ongoing. So one use cases for this would be immediate response for public safety. Think about cameras connected, recording live streaming data from a specific, I don't know, soccer stadium or an airport. And you can feed that to Amazon Recognition, and Amazon Recognition will give you real-time recognition of person, of key elements inside the room, etc. Another option that you can do with that is just upload the video and analyze the video based on the same logic. And you can do filtering of video for explicit or suggestive content, for example, to perform video filtering in online, which is really cool. And I would like to show you a little bit of what this can do. 1 second. So here's the demo of the video recognition in Amazon. As you can see, there's just a simple video feed, and it's already analyzing that we see Jeff Bezos here, and it can tell you that there's a human involved here, and there's a couple of people, audience, there's a crowd, and there's furniture, etc. So you can get all of these elements from a video. Currently, it's only from an uploaded video, but of course, there's an API to do that. And I can show you something that I did for just a small video that I've uploaded from the movie Kick-Ass. And you can see that the system identifies faces within that video. It identifies celebrities. And again, it gives you object and activity summaries. So there was a furniture, piano, faces, etc., etc. So based on that element, you can enrich your application, and you can, decide to perform action based on those analysis. So that's something which is really simple and really cool. Up until now, we probably had to have something very complicated to analyze video, but now Amazon is serving you this feature as a service. So that's cool. Then Kinesis video streaming is basically something very similar, but it gives you also the ingestion to store this huge amount of video and perform machine learning and analytic on top of that. So think about this huge bucket that is able to store, encrypt, and index the video streams, and then provide the easy-to-use API for your application, so you can retrieve and the videos as indexed fragments based on tags, for example, timestamps or faces or elements from inside those videos. So this can be very powerful for people who are dealing with video application. Now another nice feature is Comprehend, which is working on text as opposed to video. Now what Comprehend gives you is it gives you the ability to analyze text from social media or emails, web pages, etc. And what it will try to analyze using big data algorithm that Amazon have created, that AWS have created for us, is it will try to give us some context. So who was speaking with who? Was it the things that were said? Was it negative or positive? What were the key phrases? Did people mention places? So this will give you a sort of a summary of what has been done. And again, based on that, you can analyze and actually serve people who are speaking on social networks with, let's say, advertisements that are more aligned to the subjects and matters that they are talking about. And so this analysis of language and text is going to be updated regularly by AWS, and they're going to keep providing you with new models, and then everything you forward to the Comprehend will just give you the output extracted with topics and phrases in easy way. So that's another really cool feature by AWS again. In the terms of IoT, so there were two major new features that were announced. The first thing is this IoT device management. So device management gives you the ability to manage a fleet of IoT devices, which includes onboarding, organizing, monitoring, and remote management. And the idea here is to help you distinguish between your devices and help you manage the life cycle of those devices from onboarding till you retire the devices. Once the devices are actually in service, you can easily group and track the devices. So you can securely add attributes like name, type of manufacturing, or certificates to them, and then arrange them into groups. It will allow you to locate devices in a near real-time manner if you need to troubleshoot something. It will help you understand the health of your devices. And So actually, the idea of this feature is to help you with all the managerial process of the device themselves. And another thing that was announced, which is complementary to this feature, is the device defender, where now that you're managing a large fleet of devices, you also want to be able to defend them. So the IoT Device Defender is actually a tool that allows you to do continuous auditing, real-time monitoring and alerts, fast investigation and migration, monitoring and alerting. The idea is that it will have some models for continuous audit for security policy associated with the device. It will try to analyze that they are not deviating from the security best practices that you have set up, and to alert you when they did. It will do that by monitoring the IoT device traffic and their behavior, and try to analyze if what they're doing, the traffic that they are sending out, if it's part of their custom behavior, if it's normal, if that's an anomaly, or this is exactly what you have planned it to be. So again, this will allow you to monitor their behavior, and if that deviates from normal standards that you have selected, as you are already able to do the device management, you will be able to disable devices that you don't wanna, that you think that have been compromised, and it also will allow you to make sure that devices are not suffering from DDoS, or if a fleet of your devices are attacking your service, you will be able to group those devices and just shut them down or disconnect them from the entire service. That's something which is really cool. Now going forward, compute. In the compute area, we have a lot of really nice new features. We have Fargate, which is the container service without worrying about anything under the task or application layer. We have the EKS, which is the managed Kubernetes cluster, Spot-Inst Hibernate, which is something which is really, really cool. What it allows you is it allows the workloads to keep all of the state in memory. So if something happened, or you lost your Spot-Inst and it shut down, once you actually start it again, it will be able to continue from the same exact position it's been left on. So even if you have some state in the instance, you will be able to recreate that states and bring it back to production. It does that by writing the state into the EBS root volume, similar to how laptops are coming back from Hibernate, and just read that back and put it back into RAM. M5 and H1 instances, which are new, T2 Unlimited, which is a new feature for the T2 instance, EC2 Bare Metal, and interregion peering. Well, interregion is another, it's a small feature. I'm not gonna do a complete slide on that, but I just wanna mention that it's really nice because what it allows you is to do private peering on top of Amazon network. So if up until now, when you were connecting your different VPCs in different availability zones or different regions via VPNs, this is something you're not obligated to do anymore, as you can just traverse over Amazon private links. So this is another feature just from AWS helping you to do much cleaner, easier implementation without the need to configure or complicate network elements. And no longer you have to worry about that. So you don't need to manage it, and you don't need to patch it in the future. So let's talk a little bit about Fargate. Fargate, as I said, is technology for deploying and managing containers. So up until now, what Amazon gave us is, what AWS gave us is they gave us ECS. And ECS was a clustering mechanism that allows us to create our own application and then host them in the orchestration layer. So now AWS came and say, well, that's not even needed anymore. And the reason is that we want to release you from the burden of actually taking care of orchestration. It's a world where orchestration doesn't matter. It's truly portable. It has much higher SLA because you don't need to care about anything but the task or the container. And it's very elastic as it sits on top of already standardized technologies, which is currently the ECS, and it's going to be EKS, so Kubernetes, in 2018. So again, this technology is really nice because the time to market with this technology is very fast. If you have your container, the same one that you are working on locally in your environment, in your laptop, all you have to do is upload that to the system, and AWS will take care of the orchestration and infrastructure. So no longer you have to provision ECS, you don't need to provision the containers, the orchestration system themselves. It's eliminate the need of the heavy lifting running containers at scale. It eliminates all of your need to run, patch, and manage clusters. A lot of our customers are saying, you know, we want to do what we know best, which is deal with the application. So this is what gives you this option. And just to show you how simple it is, let me just show you the interface. Oh. Okay. So now if I log on to the Elastic Container Service and I choose to get started, I just need to do a container definition, which means I just need to configure the image of my container, the application that I'm running. For our example, I will run NGIX and HTTPD. I need to configure a name, a network mode, which most of it is just configure for me. Now I need to define if my services needs to be available from the internet, which of course I want, so I will add the load balancer. And I can decide if I want to have a single application or I want to have an available application by just adding more tasks. Okay, application, the load balancer already exists because I've already started one. So let me just change that. Okay, let's do it like this. And then just give it a name. Now, once I just press next, it'll give me the ability to review all of what I've created now. And once I press create, all the logic, so the cluster, the compute, the networking, the security, all of that will be created automatically for me. And to show you how I did that before, sorry, let me show you my current cluster, which is, as you can see, I've created the NGIX and Apache task that I showed you before. Now that task is running via Fargate, which means that all I had to do is just press next, configure my task, do the next, and that's already available online. So you can see that I have a sample page app, which didn't require me to understand anything about compute. It didn't require me to understand anything about orchestration. I just had to focus on my application. So this is something really nice because again, if you see a path that AWS is currently taking, is to take care of all your heavy lifting for you, all of the operation for you, and let you focus on what matters most, and that's your application and your logic. And there's no longer a need to configure what's seen by some people as a burden, such as security policies or, you know, the cluster itself. Everything is being done automatically, and you can focus on the application at hand. So that's one thing, of course. But again, if you do want to get involved with orchestration there, so now AWS are allowing you to do that also with EKS as opposed to ECS, which is the Managed Kubernetes Cluster. So the EKS eliminate the need for you to install, manage, or scale your Kubernetes cluster. Both in terms of workers and masters. You have it all served by AWS, which means that AWS will also take care of the patching, the upgrade of the cluster, rollback of the cluster, so it will take care of the deployment of the cluster. It will let you have the ability to use spot instances. You can use the EKS within your VPC. You can use third-party tool if you wish, the same as what you've been doing up until now, probably either by installing Kubernetes on ECS or doing that on your on-prem environment. It will allow, as I said, to do updates and rollback. And it will be able to support networks policy via special CNI. And so again, there's no need to install Kubernetes masters. You can spread the Kubernetes cluster across multiple availability zones. You can replace unhealthy masters. You don't need to take care of updates, although you can. Running the EKS as a service remove the complexity. It's making it easier for you to focus again on highly available Kubernetes environments, highly available architecture, automatically distributed Kubernetes, and also, of course, use the same logic that has already been available for scaling group and all the reliability performance scale that we've been used to getting from AWS. Of course, you will get the integration with all of the current AWS features, such as CloudTrail or identity, the load balancing, everything that we've been used to do up until now will be the same logic, but now with Kubernetes, which is, again, quite amazing, because what we saw is that 80% of the Kubernetes installation are happening now on top of just unmanaged EC2s in AWS. So AWS are listening to the customers. They saw this has been a trend, and they decided to give that as a service. So that's awesome. Now, talking about the new instance types, we have the H1, which is optimized for big data, that needs, for example, high-speed sequential access to multiple terabytes of data. If you want to build very large MapReduce cluster or host distributed file system, for example, Apache Kafka, you want to process huge amount of data. So these new instances are for you. They are based on Intel Xeon E5, which is very powerful, of course. And they have local storage optimized to deliver high throughput for I/O and also for network. So those one type of nice instances you have now. And the M5, I'm sorry, it says H5. So these are the M5, which are the new generation of general purpose The biggest advantage, of course, is the new Sound Platinum, which is a specific platform optimized by AWS. They give you a 14% better price performance. The idea is that since they are much stronger and much faster than the old ones, now instead of using same instance as M4 that you've been used to use up until now, you can just use a lower or a less dense instance of M5, which means you will pay less for that. That's of course always nice. One of the cool new instance features that have been announced is T2 Unlimited. Well, T2, which is, as you know, suited most of the time for workloads with really low CPU usage. So what we saw is that, for example, I don't know if you're aware of this, but usually T2, you have a baseline of performance. So, for example, let's see if I mark it. Yeah. For example, T2 Micro, the baseline of performance is 10%. That actually means that if you're passing the 10% benchmark, you started paying more for this instance. So the feature that now Amazon AWS are giving us is that if you are using less of the 10% baseline, you start earning credits per hour. For example, on the T2 Micro, we will be earning 6 credits per hour. And those credits are being earned in a 24 hours period. So, for example, if now you need to burst and use 15 or 20% of the baseline CPU, you can do that without paying more, as long as most of the 24 hours you're using less. So every time you're using less of the consumed power, you're earning credits, and every time you're using more, you're just using those credits. So this gives you the ability to have more usability out of the T2 without paying extra. So this is a really nice feature. Again, this is not for production usages, but it's mostly for lab development or usages that doesn't require hard CPU or high CPU usage. But again, you might have some application that you want to be available, and you know that some of the times it will require more CPU. So here's a feature that is giving you the ability to spike a burst of CPU. So no longer are you limited with the burst of CPUs, and you still not necessarily need to pay more. Another really cool instance type, or actually it's not really an instance type, or compute unit, is the EC2 Bare Metal. And the new Bare Metal is a series Intel Xeon E5, and the Bare Metal instances are full-fledged member of the EC2 family, which means that although you're getting full access to this hardware, you can still take advantage of all the services of AWS, such as elastic load balancing, auto-scaling, CloudWatch, recovery, and so forth. The use case which will be beneficial here is, for example, if you already have some virtualization layer and you don't want to be using EC2, which runs over already virtualized environment. So for example, if you are using Kubernetes and you want to install CoreOS and you want to use the full potential of your hardware, so you will be able to run CoreOS here. If you're using legacy databases that are not able to work on top of virtualization, but you would still want to move to the cloud, so you can do that here. If you are limited by hardware licenses, so you can use Bare Metal again. If you have a specialized virtual stack that you want to use, again, you gain access here to the Bare Metal, so you can do that. Same go with enterprise app that can't run virtualized. So the idea here is to ease your move to the cloud, give you a grasp of very strong hardware that is available only for you, give you access directly to the metal, and still have the possibility to use cloud-based services. So again, this is something which is really nice. For developers, AWS Cloud 9 was introduced. So what's really nice about this environment is that AWS Cloud 9 environment comes predefined with, or pre-packed, let's say, with essential tools for programming. So it has code debuggers and code runners for Java, Python, PHP, and those are just a few from the list. You don't need to install or configure anything about your let's say, development machine. The development environment is cloud-based, so it's shareable. You can invite people to work with you, comment directly on the code. So it's not only auditing the code or commenting on the code, but people can actually try to compile and test code together. Also, this gives you a machine with everything already pre-installed, and you can just go and use it. I want to show you a short video about the ability to share this environment. 1 second.
Wait, I'll do that.
Okay.
Finally, my first chance to write production code. Yeah. Whoa, small characters. Okay, fine. What do you need to do, Claire?
So what I want you to do is, Ankur and I use this to pair program a lot. Is there a change that you want to make?
Oh yeah, there needs to be beer with the pizza.
Obviously, obviously. So one of the things that Ankur and I like to do is chat within the Cloud9 IDE.
Okay.
So go ahead on the right-hand side of the screen. Go ahead and tell Ankur that you're going to make a change.
Okay.
So Werner says, hey, Ankur, I have one more thing to add. I wonder what that could be. And Ankur says, go for it. So Werner, on the left-hand panel, go ahead and make your change.
Wait, I'm getting old.
So as Werner's typing, you can see that his changes are showing up on Ankur's screen on the right-hand side. And Cloud9 autocomplete is popping up, helping him to fill in the right order parameters. So it looks like he's added our 2 beers.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Werner. So Ankur, now that that's done, go ahead.
Okay, so that was just a short clip to show you the ability to share the development environment itself. Now, let me show you that in real time. If I open my development environment, okay, now you can see in live another really cool feature. So the idea is that development environment is not supposed to be used 24/7. So I was using the environment before, and I left it, and AWS identified that there's no use. So we just shut down my compute power, so I won't have to pay for that. So now that I'm coming back, it just start it all up again and connects me back to that development environment. Okay, so as you can see, I have several screens. I have some tests, really simple test Node.js application that I've written here. If I invite someone to see the code with me, you will be able to see his name up here. You will be able to comment and change the code with me. And now something that I really liked about that is that if I want to run the code, I can either right-click here and choose to run the code. And you can see here on the debugger exactly what's going on. And it also gives me the IP that will be running my application. I can stop it from here. I have the ability to run it just from the console, so you can see that I already have all the tools installed. So I will do node test.js, and that will run the same thing. And that's also true for other languages such as Go, for example. Here you can see a small script that I wrote, just do some calculation. But the idea is similar. You don't need to install any debugger, you don't need to install any compiler. Everything is predefined for you. So this jumpstarts you to start writing your code really fast. And this is, again, something really awesome if you are an app developer and you just want to start doing your coding, doing your testing. This helps you start really fast. And again, once you're not using that, it will just automatically shut down, so you don't need to pay for that. Okay. So the last thing that I have to update you about is GuardDuty, which is a new service for threat detection and monitoring. What it basically does is without any agent, it monitors and advises what elements in your system are performing suspicious activity. For example, if your EC2 fleets are trying to acquire a domain or trying to connect to some domain or open connection to somewhere that they shouldn't, where we saw cases of, for example, EC2 that have been converted to Bitcoin miners. So the GuardDuty will try to analyze that and give you alerts based on that. So it will offer a continuous monitor and protect your AWS account and workloads, and doing that without affecting your ongoing compute. So it will not take any power of your ongoing compute. It will just analyze it silently and try to give you tips about what's going on with your workload, with your accounts, with your data, trying to identify threats, trying to identify change of behavior, anomalies, etc. And this, again, is done based on a huge amount of machine learning and big data logic that AWS, have introduced inside the system. So again, it operates completely independently from your resources. So there's no performance or availability impact on your workloads. It's fully managed. It does both anomaly detection and machine learning, and gives you a very detailed and actionable alert that you can use either to do troubleshooting or just to create reactive measurement. So I think that's about it for me today. This is what I have for you.
Thank you, Guy. If you would like to be in contact with us, you can write us at info@allcloud.io. If you have a question, you can write it in the QA section or in the chat. Let's see. We have a question from Akiva back during, I think, when you announced Aurora serverless. He said, how's the MySQL 5.7 compatibility? Guy, do you know about the compatibility?
Well, I need to go down to the detail of specific compatibility, but in general, there shouldn't be any problem. It should allow you to simply do a MySQL dump, get all of your tables out, and then import them. So I don't think the version of the current MySQL should have too many influence about the service itself. Okay.
And there's another question from Max regarding the multi-master. I think that it's in regards to this Aurora as well, multi-master, right? Guy?
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, what was the question itself?
Regarding multi-master, does this mean that writing data to one master performs an insert in both masters simultaneously?
Yeah, exactly. So In the backend, it will be syncs between all of the masters, and all of them will show the same type of data. So you don't need to worry about that. That's something that can serve for you as the service, as the offering.
Okay, so if you have any other questions, you can write them in the QA section. If you think of something later, you can write us at info@allcloud.io, and we would be glad to answer your questions. Thank you. If you have any questions about something that we didn't talk about, because there were more announcements, of course, that we didn't go into. So if you have any questions about other announcements that were announced at reInvent, you can also ask. Okay, so we have a question. Cost-wise, when is it more convenient to use the new T2 feature instead of C4 large, for example?
Well, it all depends on the use case you have. T2 are still instances that are mostly used for infrequent workloads, something which is not production grade. So those are good for that. Again, the idea was that even in dev or in staging or in infrequent application, there might be cases where you need to burst. So up until now, bursting means that you had to pay. But now, since there's a baseline, and I'm guessing that most of the time you just want to keep your instance up, but not necessarily you are using the baseline CPU, you're gaining credit. And those credits can be used on those terms when you need to burst. So, for example, for the T2 micro, you're gaining in 24 hours 72 credit. Oh no, 144 credits if I'm not mistaken, which means you can burst for 72 minutes. So that can be straight or in several cycles, and you will not have to pay for that. I hope that answered the question. So let's say that, sorry. Yeah, sure. About Cloud9, yeah.
Okay, can you read the question out loud?
I'm sorry. It was asked, can you repeat how Cloud9 switches off when not in use by Melissa? So basically, it does that automatically. This is a development platform. So it's an environment, or it's a suite that helps you develop code and test it. Behind that development environment, there's actually an instance, an EC2 compute power. The reason for that is that you need some Linux box to install all of those debuggers and code runners. So of course, when there's a compute involved, there's a price you need to pay for the compute power. But since it knows how to automatically shut down when you're not using it, you will not need to pay anything if you're not actively using the service. So the compute itself is part of the Cloud9 service. You are not paying an additional fee for compute, but the whole Cloud9 framework, you're paying by usage. So you don't need to in essence, you don't need to remember to shut it down while it's not used. It will automatically shut the entire environment down for you. And now I got another question from Melissa. How popular do I think this solution, the Cloud9, will be? Personally, I like it a lot because when you go and start developing code, and you need to start dealing with dependencies and debuggers, it tends to consume a lot of your time. So these features give you a heads up or start a much better starting point for your application needs. It means that if you want to develop something, you just log into this environment and start with the actual code development. You can share it online. You can work with a peer. Well, for example, if up until now you had to install some environment and then you had to take care of the terminal services enabling you to access that environment, that's no longer the case. You're just using it as a service. It's available for your web browser. Everything is accessible through there. So I believe it will be quite popular because it's really easy to use and it makes the life of the developer much easier. It makes time to production much quicker.
Great, thank you, Guy. So if you have any more questions, you can write us at info@allcloud. Thank you for joining, and we hope to see you at our next webinar.